I was one of the guys that kind of made all the mistakes when it came to nutrition and went through all of the fad diets, all of the crash diets before I came to where I was. So I started out doing keto, so very low carb, just eating lots of protein, lots of meat, which was never sustainable. I would, lose weight or lose fat for maybe a couple of weeks, few weeks, and I'd go on this big binge, right? And it was this vicious cycle of like, restrict, then binge, restrict, then binge. And that doesn't do good for your mental state, right? Because you just think that you're a failure because you keep going through this cycle, which is never good.
Okay, I've got something exciting to share with you. Over the past few months, my team and I have been working hard behind the scenes to create something special for you, my listeners. If you're an executive, entrepreneur, or other high performer looking to lose 20 to 30 pounds of fat, transform your body, and to do it all without giving up your favorite foods or your social life in the process, then you're gonna wanna hear this. I've never done anything like this before, but I'm confident it's going to help you win big with your health in 2022. So if you're excited to see what I have planned to help you, go to legendarylifepodcast.com/Facebook to join my exclusive Facebook group. Again, that's legendarylifepodcast.com/Facebook. See you inside. What's up, my friend, and welcome back to the Legendary Life Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Ryce, coach to busy professionals and business owners looking to take their health and fitness to that next level. And today I have a special guest for you. His name is Oliver Anwar. And like me, he's a body transformation coach for professionals and executives. He helps them make fitness a lifestyle around their careers. So I connected with Oliver over Twitter and I had some conversations with him. We agreed on so many things that I had to have him on the show. And I love having other coaches on the show. Why? Because people who write books or create content, influencers, they don't work with people, many of them. And I love to have people who actually have the experience of working with others. That way you get a different approach, a different perspective on the same principles that we both preach. So this is going to help you take your application of health and fitness principles to your lifestyle, to that next level. And I'm super excited to share this interview with you. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview with Oliver Anwar. Oliver Anwar, thanks for coming on the Legendary Life Podcast, man. I was on your show, had a lot of fun, and had to get you on mine. We're both coaches, but you're from across the pond. And, now it's my turn to turn the tables and to hear a little bit about your story and what you do. And also, more importantly, to help out the people listening, because we work with very similar clientele. So just, man, thank you for being here. And how's it going today?
Ted, I really appreciate you having me on, man. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, especially after having you on my show and things like that. And my day's been great, man. Just a day of coaching clients, a day of working. It's been great.
Yeah, and so that's great to hear. And I want to hear a little bit about your story. Now, you're based in the UK, but I remember seeing on Twitter, which is where we connected, that your father is Indonesian. I lived in Bali, but I didn't go. But Indonesia is full of different islands. Can you just talk a little bit about like your background?
Yeah, for sure. So my mum's English, my dad's from Indonesia. And if you don't know Indonesia, Bali is basically the main place that people go to, right, Ted? That's where you've been, that's like the tourist island. But Indonesia has like thousands of islands. So my dad's actually from Sumatra, which is leading up towards Malaysia, like the one a little bit to the west of Indonesia. And Sumatra is beautiful because there's not many tourists there. It's beautiful beaches, great food. And like you get like all this beauty without like it being packed, so it's like unspoiled. So yeah, it's great, and you get to see the local Indonesian culture, and yeah, people driving around on motorbikes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's great, man.
Yeah, I've got to check that out. One of the I don't want to call it a regret, but one of the goals that I made for myself after going to Bali and seeing how like people, at least when I was in Miami Beach and just Bali, oh my gosh, right? Then you go there, it's all these Australians in Canggu and like, it's just a party place. And it's like, whoa, nobody's even Indonesian here or Balinese here. So yeah. And then you start learning, oh, well, there's a lot of different islands here, Sumatra, all these different places to explore. So really looking forward to that. And Oliver, how did you get into this game of coaching, of helping high performers get their health? Usually it's getting their health back, isn't it? Is what we do.
Yeah, really good question. So I started out pretty healthy as a young kid, like very into sport. So I played a good level of football, which you American guys call soccer in the UK. So I was very active. I was very fit. But, I got to 16, 17. I didn't actually make it as a professional, which was really like disheartening for me. I'd spent my whole childhood having this dream of becoming a professional and it didn't quite happen. So I get to the point where I'm 16, 17. I'm a short, skinny footballer and, I want to start going out and meeting girls, right? And unfortunately, I was in the camp of going to a college with loads of big rugby players. These guys were big, they were strong, they were massive, 6 foot. And I was like this short guy. So I was like, I need to add some muscle. So skinny kid goes to the gym and starts, trying to get some muscle. That's kind of the story. And then, I made so many mistakes when it came to my own training, injured myself, went through some really bad like dieting phases, some very bad mental places through not knowing what to do. Finally, I kind of got this down, started developing myself. And then I said, you know what? I need to start teaching people like what I've learned because I went through so much trial and error. Other people could kind of learn to not go through the pain that I did and have a quicker process. So I started coaching people online at university so I could make some money. Realized after a couple of years, this was amazing. I loved doing it. Worked a corporate job alongside running my business. Realized that corporate guys and high performers, execs, like these guys have such a challenge when trying to stay fit. And there's so much like, myths out there and there's so much real BS in the industry that these guys are doing all the wrong things. And I was like, these guys need help. So I created a business called The Worker Coach, which helps busy workers, high performers, professionals, and execs to get fitter, healthier and stronger. And I've been doing that for the past 5 years. It's now my full-time thing. And that's how I got to where I am.
Brilliant, as you would say in the UK, right?
I love the accent.
It's brilliant. Brilliant. Wow. Yeah, that's super cool. And, I had a similar journey that I shared on your show. Let's dive into this because you and I, we connected on Twitter. Twitter and social media in general is where a lot of people go. And podcasts like this, a lot of people go there. They want to make changes with their health. They're like, let's see who's saying what on Twitter about getting in shape. And it's keto, it's carnivore, it's then like all this craziness. You just get rid of seed oils and sugar and just never eat anything that is somewhat kind of delicious ever again. And what people, probably the main thing that I get from people, and I'm sure it's the same, but I'm curious to hear your experience with it, is just like, I just don't know what to do. Like I've tried this, I tried the fasting, I tried keto, I lost some weight, then I went carnivore, but then I gained weight back and I was just going crazy. So what do your clients say with like, what are they struggling with when they first come to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the main thing that clients come to me with is the issue with nutrition, right? It's finding a sustainable way to lose body fat or to gain muscle, or I think maybe even before that is deciding which one they want to do, right? Having the goal of what they'd like to do and then having a sustainable way to eat to cater for that. Because a lot of the guys that me and you work with, they're high performers. They can blast themselves in the gym. They can blast themselves for workouts. But the hard part is like, all right, how do I eat like around this crazy schedule I've got? Like, how do I, optimize for my training? How do I make sure that I feel full throughout the day? All of these things are important. And how can I do it around like a 70-hour week? So I think nutrition is definitely the biggest one. Yeah.
And are most of your clients in the UK, by the way?
Most of my clients are actually based in the US. So I have clients based in the US mainly, and then the UK would be second.
Interesting. Yeah. I've had a few UK clients too, but mostly, and Canadian clients, but mostly, and a couple European along the way in the past few years, but mostly in the States. It's interesting. We definitely have a major problem there. I'm curious, do people in the UK just think differently about investing in coaching? Or what do you think the difference is there? I'm just curious personally.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought this up. I was talking about this with somebody and I was saying to them, well, all my clients are from the US, mostly. I'm a British guy. Why am I not training British guys? And I think, especially when it comes to like investment, like America, it's like the American dream, right? Like there's a mindset that like when you invest in yourself that, you know, you're going to get a good return and it's a good thing. Whereas British people, they're very kind of like reserved. They're very kind of like skeptical and they like to question things a lot more. So like when you're trying to pitch them something or sell anything to British people, they're kind of like, I don't know about that. There's a lot more objections. And it's kind of like the culture that kind of British people have. They're just a bit more like, they just can't be sold as well. Whereas I find with America, because of like the culture, American guys, they just really like to invest in it. And that's just been my kind of, experience from it. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. The guys from the UK that I've worked with have been from referrals from other entrepreneurs. So they were kind of on that type of mentality, but I don't get a lot of British people reaching out to me. It's mostly Americans. And it's kind of interesting because you say that British people are skeptical. I feel like Americans are as well, but there must be like just a little bit more of a skepticism. And a different mentality. I think also the British culture, your culture is much older than, we're former British colony, right? And I think that one of the things about, not to go down too deep of a rabbit hole on this, but one of the things I really like about the US, even though I've been living outside of it for the past few years, much needed break, right? Is that it's such a new country that in some ways we feel bad, we're disconnected from our roots. But the positive side of that is like, we're not hindered by the past. It's not like the British Queen and country and the empire from the past and whatever people think about that, because you got a deeper history. And so we feel like anything's possible. And then somehow, like, I don't know, we invest in all this Tony Robbins stuff and hire people like you and me. It's great. But yeah, cool, man. And let's talk about this because we both deal with high performers. You mentioned the number one thing that people come to you with is eating around this busy schedule. You and I, we both take a flexible approach to nutrition. How'd you end up on that? Did you go through like the keto? What was the journey there behind the dietary choices that you made that led you to like taking a more flexible approach?
That's a great question because I was one of the guys that kind of made all the mistakes when it came to nutrition and went through all of the fad diets, all of the crash diets before I came to where I was. So I started out doing keto, so very low carb, just eating lots of protein, lots of meat, which was never sustainable. I would, lose weight or lose fat for maybe a couple of weeks, few weeks, and I'd go on this big binge, right? And it was this vicious cycle of like, restrict, then binge, restrict, then binge. And that doesn't do good for your mental state, right? Because you just think that you're a failure because you keep going through this cycle, which is never good. I then started doing macro tracking, which I still think is very important, but I was obsessed with it, right? So I would macro track everything to the gram, right? Sauces, vegetables, and like I would just live on MyFitnessPal because I would think I need this to be perfect. And it stopped me from going out to eat. It stopped me from drinking alcohol. It just made me live at home and just eat and live like a robot because I was so obsessed with like this food tracking and just looking a certain way. Then after a while, I realized, there can actually be a healthy balance where, you can 80% of the time track your food, have potentially, healthy nutrient-dense foods that keep you full. Don't be obsessed with food tracking. And then 20% of the time, go out and enjoy yourself and have a pizza or, go and have a burger and enjoy a night out with friends, right? Or whatever you've got on. And I found that having like this intuitive approach, as well as kind of food tracking and selecting the right foods to keep me full, that really helped sustain me because I was never hungry. I never felt like I needed to binge because I was getting like, my nights of pizza when I wanted to. I didn't cut out carbs or do any of that stuff and worry about insulin and all that BS that you see people post about, right? It was just a nice, simple way to eat. And for me, like that works for my lifestyle because I like to travel, very sociable, and it doesn't restrict me. I always, like, my ethos is diet should be inclusive, not exclusive, right? The more that you can be inclusive, the better sustainability you're going to have.
Yeah, that's such a next level sort of thinking, at least for me it was, where you go from like, oh, if I'm really strict, I can see these changes, they happen fast. But then I, like you, I was a low carber for a long time. And then I would just break down and then get a pint or two of ice cream or then get more things. I would break down eventually. I couldn't maintain it. And you said something really important where a lot of people go through that. Now, I never personalized it for some reason, but a lot of people have told me as well, like, I feel like a failure, or maybe I'm addicted to food, or maybe I have a real problem here. When when reality is, it's just like this restriction thing. It's just kind of what happens to everybody eventually, or maybe not everybody, but most of the people who try strict diets, we all end up giving in. Yeah. Do a lot of people, what are some of the misconceptions you have to help your clients with when they come to you and they're like, okay, so I have to stop eating carbs, right? And just eat vegetables and chicken breast. What are some of the misconceptions?
Yeah, so definitely one of the misconceptions is around carbohydrates, is that they can't consume carbohydrates if they're dieting, right? Especially if they have a fat loss goal. We know that when you don't eat enough carbohydrates, it's going to really negatively affect your mood. It's going to affect your training performance, all of that kind of stuff. So they're very kind of anti-carb, and they've always been told that you need to stay away from this kind of stuff because it's bad for me. They're also told, the myth of eating carbs after 6 p.m. is going to make you fat as well. That's one that people have. So they're like, I don't eat carbs after 6 p.m. That's another one that they have, just one of the common myths. And another big one is like, I just eat clean without the understanding of calories. I think this is really important because when it comes to weight loss, right, you could eat as much food as you want, but it doesn't matter how clean it is. If you're not eating the right amount of calories and you don't have the right macronutrients, you're not going to get the results you want in regards to fat loss and muscle building and the other bits in your body like hormones. So saying like, oh, I've just eat clean, like I eat healthy all the time, I don't know what's going on, without an understanding of calories at all. That was a big thing that clients came to me with because, like that's a big mistake I think a lot of people make.
Yeah, I made that. Let's talk a little bit about that one too, right? Because I've had people I remember someone breaking down, they were like, no, well, today I had a green juice and then I had this salad. They were telling me, I'm like, dude, you're obese. You're not even overweight. You're obese. Whatever you're doing, you can tell me what you're doing, but it's not right. And so how do you start to help them when, let me back up for a second, because this idea that gets perpetuated on social media, at least I've seen it, right? Where people are just like, no, if you're fat, I'll just kind of be rude about it, right? Because that's kind of how the way they say it. They're like, if you're fat, you're eating like shit. You're eating like shit. But my clients, and I'm curious about your experience too here, because my clients are high performers. They might drink a little bit too much alcohol, but they're not like, I ate like 8 Little Debbie's cakes. I don't know if you have those, but if you know what that is.
I know what they are.
Yeah, they're terrible. Right. You get a lot of American clients. So 8 Little Debbie's cakes and like 30 Twinkies. People aren't doing that. They're eating ribeye steak, potatoes, cheese. They're eating these quote unquote whole foods or minimally processed foods, but they're still struggling. How do you start to have the conversation there about what really matters for fat loss when it comes to food choices and the whole calorie thing?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really good question. So what we talk about is kind of like the portions that they're having. So if they say to me, okay, I only eat this, I say, okay, well, what size of the portions you eat in when it comes to like your potato, or how much cheese are you putting on, right? Like, and if they can't quantify it, I say, okay, cool. Next time you have that meal, I want you to eat exactly like you do, but weigh it, or show me a photo of it, right? And when you actually see like the size of the portions and then the frequency of the food, you're like, well, if you're having like these big meals like 4 or 5 times a day, right? Even though they're healthy, that's going to add up to a lot of calories. And I tell them that could be, maybe 2,500 to 3,000 calories. Once they have that understanding of like, okay, I'm eating 3,000 calories that I didn't even know, I thought it was less, you then start to find the calories they need and start to wind that down a little bit. So you're like, okay, cool, how can we reduce this down a little bit? So you're eating the foods that you like, but within the right portions and within the right calorie requirements, because, they're not doing too many bad things. They're eating the good, right foods, just in the wrong amount, potentially the wrong frequency. It's giving them that bit of self-awareness and then helping them track their food is really eye-opening for them. And then it helps them understand too what's in foods and how much calories those foods contain.
Yeah. So you start helping them get awareness about it. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's what we all do, right? But I like how you're describing how you talk to them about it, because yeah, it's a tough conversation sometimes when someone's eating all the right foods, right? Well, I'm eating all the right foods. I'm eating clean, like you mentioned, the whole eating clean thing. And I'm curious, so the way I look at it, in my experience of doing this, right? There are 2 things I help people with. There's like that initial, what you're talking about, what we all talk about, right? We got to get awareness about the calories, got to make sure we're lifting weights in the gym. We got to make sure we're either doing cardio or getting up and getting our steps in, whatever it is. And then there's okay, you've educated me on what to do, but I'm having a hard time doing it. Tell me do you experience that? And what are the things that stop your high performers from following through with what they're supposed to do? How do you help them through that when they come up into those challenges?
For sure. It's a great question, because especially with the guys that we work with, they're very busy. There's lots of responsibility, right? It can potentially feel like a chore, right? To have all of these things, like it's just another thing on their to-do list of millions of things to do that day. So I try and break it down really simply. I say, look, we're going to set 3 non-negotiables for this week. And I say to them, don't worry about anything else. I just want you to focus on these 3 things. And this basically takes the focus from, looking at everything and worrying about all these small things to 3 really important things. So it could be, I want you to hit 3 workouts this week. I want you to eat a certain amount of calories and protein per day. And I want you to get 8 hours sleep, right? Or aim for 7 to 8 hours sleep. Now, when you break it down like that, you've only got 3 things to focus on there. You don't have to worry too much about the details, right? It's focusing on the principles that are going to give them kind of like the highest return. And when that happens, they're like, okay, I can manage that. I can get 3 workouts in. These are the days I've got in. Boom. Okay, cool. Food, I understand how many calories. And then it just becomes a lot easier because you're simplifying it for them. And you're not overcomplicating the process. And for these guys, they don't want complicated. They want simple. They want easy. And that will get them results as long as they stay consistent.
What that brings up for me when you say it, thinking about some of the questions that I get, like, oh, well, wait a minute. Are these anti-inflammatory foods? Or wait a minute, should I be using coconut oil, or should I be using olive oil? Or, is protein, does it cause cancer? If I eat it now, if I eat a high protein, will it cause cancer? If I do this, in 10 years? And people are concerned about all these details. Some of them have some importance. Some of them no, right? And that's kind of the world we live in. And it's just fascinating how, like, I don't know, I'm curious if you get feedback about this, but I think people have the idea like, oh, you're a coach. So what's the complicated biohacking, nutrition, supplement, optimized workout routine that's going to be so complicated to follow, but give me these great results? And then the reality is like, hey, hit like what you said, like make sure you eat this much protein, get 3 workouts, and make sure you're sleeping, right?
Yeah, that's it. And, workouts as well, it's not about having, the most fully optimized crazy workout or to biohack your way to health. What it is, it's like looking at someone's situation and saying, how much time commitment do you have? What are you willing to do? And, how can we fit this in? And I think this is why, me and you, we charge what we do, is because everything we do is customized and personalized to people's life. And we make sure that it's not outside of the restrictions that they've got or their capabilities, because most people that are high performers, they've got so much on. They can't train 6 days a week, some of them, and eat chicken, broccoli and rice 6 days a week. It's just not realistic for them. So it's kind of finding ways to work out around that they enjoy, while sticking to a few key principles. And as long as we stick to those principles within that framework, then they'll get results. I think that, doing what you're able to do, not what you think you can do, is also a really important point.
Yeah, doing what you're able to do. And so many of us, we try to take on more than what we have these big ideas about what we can accomplish. And then in the context of everything else, it gets a little tricky.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to change directions a little bit. Both you and I, and a lot of our clients, I would imagine your clients as well, definitely my clients, love to travel. What are some of the places that you've been that have had like an influence on your coaching?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So I would say, I think definitely going to Asia has given me a really good influence on my coaching, because, when you go to Asia, you realize that like food is a tough one, because there's like all these nice curries, there's like, all of these amazing dishes. And you're kind of like, well, if I've got clients that are based over there or they're traveling, it's going to be hard for them to stick to, maybe a calorie target, right? So, in this respect, it taught me to maybe like teach clients how to skip breakfast in the morning, teach them how to increase their activity levels to kind of counteract the food, that kind of thing. And in these climates, it's all very warm, it's nice and hot, so you can do this stuff. You can be outdoorsy a lot, you can surf. So actually increasing potential activity when clients are away in these places to cater for the food can be one thing that I've learned. I'd say that's definitely the biggest.
Yeah. So in Asia, and what place in Asia, by the way? Is there one country?
Thailand, I think. Really? Thailand, and especially Indonesia, where my dad's from. There's all these nice curries and dishes and food, and the Asians as well. My dad's an Asian cook, and they tend to put a lot of additional sauces into these foods that you don't know about. So, whatever you think there is, whatever they've cooked it in, there's going to be way more fat in there. There's going to be like way more sauces, like maybe like you don't know how many calories of extra stuff. So so you're always eating more calories than you think you are when you're in these places.
Yeah, that's so true. And I would love to try some good Indonesian curries. That sounds delicious. But as far as like the influences on coaching, I'd have to say Bali and Thailand. Probably Thailand the most as well. It's kind of interesting, right?
Why is that?
Thailand can change your life. I would say that the way they. Wow, that's a good question. I think one of the things there that I really like is the food is delicious and it's very full of spices. And it was very easy for me to get lean there and like really enjoy doing it. Eating out 2 meals every single day, and just I would cook breakfast at my place. I would have like protein shakes or scrambled egg whites with some veggies, and I would just go out and eat, And I think there, the food, it's just very flavorful. All the spices and everything have additional benefits for your health. And compare that to a place like Brazil, where there's some great meat here, but it's just a different situation. Also, I think people have a lot of misconceptions about Asia. I'm interested in your thoughts on this too. Have you been to Hong Kong, by the way?
I haven't. No, not Hong Kong.
Okay. I mentioned Hong Kong. I mean, I lived in Thailand for a long time, but I only spent a week in Hong Kong. But of course, the Blue Zone, Stan Butner, and it's always about Okinawa. And I bring up Hong Kong because Hong Kong, the life expectancy in Hong Kong actually beat Okinawans, right?
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if it's still the same because, the life expectancy changes every year. but it beat Okinawa. And if you read some of the stuff about the blue zones and the meals, it's like, man, you go to Hong Kong, they're not they're all smoking cigarettes, and they're all like, they're eating a ton of rice, and there's this special and kind of disgusting like dish that they have that's a mixture of like macaroni, Western macaroni, and then like pork Chinese broth. It's not that good, man, but it's like a Hong Kong thing. But they're living a long time. And if you see what happens there, people don't stay indoors because the places are so small. It's so expensive. So they're just constantly out, constantly walking. And it's like, who knows how many steps they're taking every day. I think there's just a lot of misconceptions about like Asia and why people are living so long there, especially when we read about the blue zones, but then you actually go to some of these places and you're like, I think it might be something different, I think there might be more nuance at least. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think there's more nuance. And especially when you look at the climate as well, like a lot of, Asian people, they spend a lot of time outside, right? Like a lot of time spent walking, in the third world countries, a lot of them work in markets, right? And they do a lot of labor jobs and heavy lifting, that kind of thing. So when you take that into account, they're actually probably more physically active than Westerners that, kind of sat at a desk 12 hours a day, right? In a cold cubicle. That's kind of like what I think sometimes. They're getting access to sunlight, they're moving. Their diet might not be great, but, just the fact they are moving and getting access to that daily vitamin D can be a big difference.
Yeah, just a totally different lifestyle. Yeah. Do you get people, because I think one of the things in Western society, I get a lot of people like, hey, I get a lot of people who are concerned about longevity. And I think the answer really is like, go live a life like that. Move to Sardinia, right? Like move to a blue zone and live that lifestyle, or move to Okinawa and live that lifestyle, or wherever. But the question people are really asking is, how do I watch Netflix? How do I work in my stressful job where I don't get outside very much? How do I spend a lot of time on Instagram and argue with people about politics on Twitter or whatever, or dietary ideology, and live to like 120? Do you get a lot of people asking you about that? And what's your take on it? The whole.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, when you live this natural lifestyle, right, where you're outside, you're in the sun, you have less access to technology, you're working out, you're eating like naturally organic food or wherever, homegrown food. You don't care about the other stuff because you're enjoying yourself, right? You're present, you're feeling great. Whereas when you're like super stressed out, you're locked in a cubicle, you're eating junk food, like it makes you feel bad about yourself. And then when you feel bad about yourself, like you get into bad habits, right? Whether that's watching Netflix, watching porn, or all this kind of stuff. And you just go in this like downward spiral of like bad habits. And that's what makes people overweight and unfulfilled, is because they're stuck in this vicious cycle and they haven't had that extra experience of somewhere different or somewhere new to kind of reset themselves or get a new perspective and think, actually, my life can be different. Or even if it's not my life for a whole time, I can enjoy this 2 weeks away and like reset and get back to good habits before I go back. I feel a lot of people are stuck in that their own kind of like their own cage, really, which is quite sad to say, but like their own cage that they haven't got out of yet. But once you start experiencing a lot of the world and you travel, which I've been very fortunate enough to do, you have a different view on things and different perspective, and I think that's really important.
Where's the place that I asked you about the place that made the most impact on you as a coach, and you mentioned Sumatra, where your dad's from, and then Thailand. What about the most impactful country or city that you've been to that made a big personal impact on you, and what was the impact?
Yeah, so I actually spent in May, a couple of months ago, I spent a month in Lisbon, which was the capital of Portugal down in the Mediterranean. And obviously we had a chat about this before. There's a lot of crossovers between kind of like Brazil and Portugal. The thing about Portugal that's so beautiful is it's the culture of the people that, like, it just hit me. Like, you go into central London, right? Or New York, one of these big cities, right? You get people pushing each other through the tube, right? People shouting at each other, people angry, right? All uptight, eating rubbish food, this cold weather, like this completely like stressful environment that would make you so stressed. And then you go to somewhere like the Mediterranean, like Lisbon, and people are like, girls are in sundresses, guys are out having coffee with their buddies, like outside where it's nice and warm. People are singing and dancing in the street, and there's like this whole different like life that people are living. And these guys, like, they look great, man. Like, they're tanned, they're smiling, they look happy, they look half their age. And you think, lifestyle plays such a big difference. And for me, like, when I saw that, I was like, well, when I get older, I'm going to be moving to Portugal and Lisbon and, getting a nice Portuguese wife, man, and living over there, because, man, the lifestyle was great. And I think if I can, sustain that and then get older with that, that's going to make me, grow up a lot healthier, I think, and a lot more happy.
Yeah, that's something I'm kind of thinking about, contemplating, maybe even struggling with. I'm going back to Miami in a few weeks, and I'm very curious. Now, it's more like that than other places in the US, but it's not Brazil. I'm like the awkward American who like walks too fast, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, well, I got to slow down, chill out. In Brazil, you're not like, hey, what? Tell me, do you have this? Can you get this done? No, it's hey, how are you? How is everything going? Oh, by the way, like, easy, don't move too fast. Have some pleasant exchanges. I was in the UK when I was 17, so it's been quite a few years, but I assume it's somewhat similar to the US, where it's like, yeah, I don't care about you. I don't care about what's going on. I don't care about how you feel. I need this done. Can you get me this? Or you forgot my almond milk in my latte. Like, you've literally ruined my day, And then I'm kind of struggling with this. And I think it's an important question that everyone needs to ask themselves, because what we're really talking about is the environment, the impact of the environment. And I feel like in the online space, we're all like, hey, what's the one magic superfood that I can add to can I just add some acai powder to my smoothie and maybe some spirulina? And then like, it'll make up for the fact that I live in New York. I hate the cold, and people are mean to me here. And I don't like my job. It sucks my soul out every day, even though I make a lot of money. Like, what are your thoughts? I mean, you just kind of shared some of your thoughts on it, but do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I could definitely add to that. I think, you get trade-offs, right? So when you go to places like Brazil and like Lisbon, you get this laid-back lifestyle. It's very like relaxed. Like you said, people want to ask how you are. It's slower paced. And maybe like where you are, and if you're listening to this, you're not a high performer, maybe you need to be in a big city for your career, and you need that speed, right? And you need like the hustle and bustle to do that. And that's why I kind of like the city, because you need the infrastructure. It's nice to have that buzz around and kind of that energy, right? But that's not to say that you can't go to these places, even if it's on a holiday, and like take something from the culture that you get, right? And I always say this, like, you should go to a place, take something from the culture and bring it back. So, a simple thing is just like the way you treat the waitress at the coffee shop, right? Take how you'd speak to the waitress in Lisbon, very relaxed, very, very chilled out, to the lady in New York or in, London, right? They've probably had a day of loads of guys shouting at them, telling them they've forgotten their milk. Relax, smile, ask them how their day is. Don't ask them for anything. And you know what? That will make their day, but that's also you learning about other parts and like bringing it into a new environment. So that's, probably the one thing that I'd say is, you can take parts from other countries and introduce it to where you are, whether that's food, whether that's mannerisms, culture, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's such a great point. It reminds me, I was in New York after coming back from Asia, and I was in a coffee shop there, and I forget where, Chelsea Piers, maybe, I forget. I don't know New York that well, but I was like, hey, how's everything going? She's like, you're the first person, this was at night. She's like, you're the first person who's asked how my day has been all day. And I felt so bad for her. I was kind of awkward. Like, I was like, well, okay, have a good one. But I felt really bad. And Yeah, it's something that, I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but definitely the vibe of where we are and how we interact with people, even if you're just a selfish bastard and you only care about your health, it's still going to be better for you, because adding more stress just makes it harder to accomplish everything that you're trying to accomplish. Yeah, I love your advice there. When you go someplace, take something back from the culture. Well said. Well, let's wrap up here. And before we do, I'd like to ask, where would you want someone who's listening, who connects with what you said here today, to learn more about you and what you're up to, and perhaps what you do coaching wise?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me, I'm most active on Twitter. My tag is Ro Anwar, so R-O Anwar. That's where I'm most active. You'll also find my website, which is theworkercoach.com, where you can find out about the work I do with clients and things like that. I mainly work with busy professionals and execs, busy people that don't have much time but want to find a sustainable way to, build a lean, high-performing body. So, yeah, shoot me a DM on Twitter, connect with me. I'd love to chat. Any questions, feel free. I try to tweet a lot of actionable advice on my feed too. So even if you just follow me, you'll find some nuggets in there, hopefully, that will be valuable to you.
Yeah, and you got a great Twitter thing going on. Really enjoy what you put out there. So that is Ro Anwar. That's at ROANWAR. And then your website is theworkercoach.com. Cool. And what is one thing that you'd want someone to take away from this podcast today to make their life better?
For sure. I think the one thing to take away from this podcast today is the importance of sustainability, right? I can't talk about this enough. It's the fact that it's less about speed of trying to get these quick results, and it's about building long-lasting habits and a lifestyle that you can sustain, so that after you finish with working with a coach like Ted or like myself, you can finish and go, I know how to have the tools to eat sustainably. I know how to work out effectively and carry this on without feeling that I'm going to crash the next week. If you can do that, you've got the perfect system to be healthy. So always look at the long term before kind of the short term speed of wanting to get quick results. And although it takes a bit of patience, it will pay off in the long run, and it will make it so much easier for you to get results.
Oliver Anwar, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure, man. And looking forward to doing it again.
For sure. Thank you for having me, Ted.
I hope you learned a lot from my interview with Oliver Anwar. Such a great conversation, such practical takeaways. Make sure you go and implement something. Don't just let this be some entertainment for you, but go implement something. Can't wait to have him back on the show. There's so many important things to talk about. So that's it for today, but we're going to meet again on Friday for another Real Talk conversation. And this time, I'm going to talk about the magic ratio for happiness. For most of us, it's a struggle to stay in a good emotional state, but there's a reason for that. And your own biology works against you, but you can overcome it. You can feel good most of the time. And if you want to find out what you have to do to make that happen, tune in on Friday. So have an amazing week and speak to you then. Okay, I've got something exciting to share with you. Over the past few months, my team and I have been working hard behind the scenes to create something special for you, my listeners. If you're an executive, entrepreneur, or other high performer looking to lose 20 to 30 pounds of fat, transform your body, and to do it all without giving up your favorite foods or your social life in the process, then you're gonna wanna hear this. I've never done anything like this before, but I'm confident it's going to help you win big with your health in 2022. So if you're excited to see what I have planned to help you, go to legendarylifepodcast.com/Facebook to join my exclusive Facebook group. Again, that's legendarylifepodcast.com/Facebook. See you inside.